You have people who are your members, people who are rebuilding their lives after living in homelessness, who have college degrees. That's breaking a stereotype that a lot of us have.
Oh, I don't think it would be what anyone would expect. And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, I think a lot of people have become closer to that or have experienced that never thought they would.
Hey, what's good? Today I'm talking with Lindsey Krezner of the nonprofit Back on My Feet about ways that she's helping homeless people rebuild their lives through a running program and job search training, and ways that you can help. If you can share a little bit about what Back on My Feet does and how your team helps.
So Back on My Feet combats homelessness through the power of fitness, community support, and essential employment and housing resources. We meet 3 mornings a week, bright and early, at 5:30 or 5:45, with our members and our community members that get together and run. And then we support our members through our Next Steps program, which is a employment, wellness, and financial program that helps members identify their goals, identify any skills gaps, and we start working with members to fill those gaps and create that success.
Is there an example that you can think of when you think about the work that Back on My Feet is doing that is an inspiring story that really sticks in your mind as a moment where you realize, hey, you know what? We're making a difference in people's lives.
I always love to tell this story. Actually a couple of my very first members, my very first member, he joined Back on My Feet because he had really big feet. He wore size 13, and I told him I would get him a pair of size 13. He actually went through a lot of medical problems while he was through the program, but he came to me one day. He had been working in warehouse for 25 years. His wife had passed away, and he had became an alcoholic, and it was just kind of his life spiraled downwards from there. He came, joined Back on My Feet, kind of showed up the first couple days, and then we sat down to do goal setting. And I asked him what he wanted to do, and he said, "Well, I've been doing this my entire life, but I actually really enjoy cooking." I'm like, cool. Okay. So we worked together. We found him a training. Emily Griffith used to have a really great training program that's now in the south of the city. So we went through that training program. He had a couple of medical hiccups, so he couldn't actually run. He had a bad knee, but he showed up every morning to make sure he brought the reflective gear and was a part of that community and part of that circle up. And then he graduated. He found a job right when COVID hit, when you could no longer get a job in hospitality. We found him a job with one of our partners at a senior living community. Where he went, and he just flourished. He loved the job, saved money. We worked on budgeting. He actually got married last year. I was at his wedding, and now has been with the same company for 2 years and transitioned to different pieces. And I think the biggest piece I can always tell is, when I run into him, couple things. If something goes bad, as I mentioned, he reaches out to his community. He makes sure he has got those pieces. And then he's always looking to how he can give back. How can I make sure, the next person gets this opportunity? How do I talk sense into someone who's making really silly decisions right now? So really that love to give back, and really seeing him be successful in that way and build his life in a way he never thought was possible.
What's the secret sauce for Back on My Feet?
First thing you mentioned is the running. One kind of misconception is that we are a run club. You've got to get out and sprint in the morning. But really, we meet our members where they're at. So a lot of our members aren't going to start out running. They're going to start out walking or walk running. And then the big piece that I also mentioned earlier is that community piece. All of a sudden, I'm not sitting across from a caseworker. I'm not sitting across from someone who doesn't know what's going on. It's one of my neighbors in the community. We have a very community-driven model with volunteers coming out to support our members in multiple different ways. And then we take that piece and we build upon that. So I like to use the example of, I want to go run a marathon. If you can use that as, I want to get a job. You don't just run out one day and run a marathon. The same way as you don't just go out one day and get a job. We look at how do we break that down into real pieces. We start with career exploration, because a lot of our members have done the same thing for a very long time and either want to build their career there, or they want to look at something different. So we look at career exploration. We do coaching along the way. We help our members build those resumes and with the job search process to get to where they need to be.
Okay, I want to jump in and say that my mission here is to spotlight people who elevate our community. I talk with ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things. They share their inspiring stories, and we get to learn how to be better neighbors. All right, let's dive back in. The run that you did this morning, walk me through that. What did that look like?
We meet either at 5:30 or 5:45, depending on which location in the city we're meeting.
Okay.
It's really easy to get there in the morning. There's no Denver traffic, so that is
Right.
nice. So first thing we do is we circle up in the morning. We always start our runs with the question of the day, which actually is dual purpose. Of course, building that community, but also a lot of our members have been alienated by community, walked past, ignored. So we want to make sure that we're creating that community and creating those conversational skills, because those are going to be important when it comes to the job and to interviews.
As you're talking, really what I'm hearing is that sense of community that you're trying to build and just establish the ability to open up and have some conversation and communicate with people in the group.
For a lot of our members, it is, the first handshake, the first high five. If not of the day, it could have been of the week, the month, the year. So it's really, really amazing. We have a lot of members that have degrees and are very tech savvy, especially our younger members who would have grown up with it. But we also have members who've just come out of prison or have worked in warehouse their entire lives, never touched a computer. So we, I remember almost probably 2 years ago exactly being on the phone with a member and trying to explain to him how to use Zoom so that we could do workshops virtually, or so that we could get together virtually in the morning and do our circle ups.
You said something a moment ago that is fascinating, and you kind of glossed over it. You said that you have people who are your members, people who are rebuilding their lives after living in homelessness, who have college degrees, a lot of members. That's breaking a stereotype that a lot of us have about people in this situation. So can you explain that a little bit more?
Oh, I don't think it would be what anyone would expect. There is a huge stereotype about anyone who is experiencing homelessness. And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, I think a lot of people have become closer to that or have experienced that never thought they would. We have members that have master's degrees. I have got members who, had careers where they'd worked at a company for 25 years, members who've inherited $500,000. But there are other circumstances in their lives, death in the family. Addiction is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. And it can lead people to do a lot of nasty things quickly. And kind of that spiral down. No one ever wants to imagine themselves being homeless. So of course that person is bad. That person, didn't graduate high school, or that person, is, broke all the laws, did all these things. But unfortunately, if you don't have a safety net, whether that be a family, whether that be, insurance, whether that be having FMLA in case something mentally goes wrong or you lose someone in your family, your systems can fall out quickly. And once that support system is gone, it's really hard to build back. That's really why we at Back on My Feet really talk about that community piece. One part in what I can tell a member successful is that if they've completed the program, if they have graduated and are working and living on their own, and something terrible happens again. For example, I have a member whose car got stolen. What he was able to do was reach back on those tools that he had built, reach into the community that was Back on My Feet, and start solving the problem versus going back into that depression or that addiction. So it's really starting to build those skills up and be that community that can support folks. And it's not always financial. Sometimes it's just listening to someone's problem.
How do people find your organization and connect with Back on My Feet?
We partner with facility partners. And so those facility partners are going to either be a halfway house, a reentry house, a recovery center, or transitional living. And we're starting to do a little bit more with emergency shelters, which is a bit hard because, as you can imagine, 5 a.m. is early to get up. We want to make sure our members are stable in that housing piece. So we partner with those facilities. So right now we're partnered with Denver Rescue Mission and Salvation Army. So all of our members are participating in one of their programs, and then they join Back on My Feet.
What are some of the challenges today that you're facing?
One of the challenges we're facing now is people are working remotely. They're not getting up in the morning to go, get out. So getting folks out to come to runs is really, really a huge piece. Is we want to make sure we're getting those teams built back up. We used to have 20 volunteers at a morning run, and now we're looking at 5 or 6. So part of our model is matching people up 1-to-1. So getting those volunteers back out. The other piece then is there is a huge financial struggle that a bunch of our individual members had to overcome, especially our members that moved out of transitional housing in the hospitality fields, right before COVID. We were really lucky. We got a grant nationally that allowed us to help our members directly throughout COVID. So if someone lost a job, we could help pay their rent for a few months to keep them in their houses. If they needed help with groceries, medical bills. We had a member who was out of work for 4 months because of COVID, and we were able to help her financially and build those pieces back up. So I think just like the rest of society is kind of figuring out where we are now and how we move forward, we're doing that same piece.
You guys are offering a running program, Back on My Feet, but it's so much more than that. What you're talking about is a multi-level organization that's helping people, not just in the mornings and get a little bit more healthy by going for a jog or a walk in the morning, but you're giving job search training through the next, you call it the Next Step program. When does a member of yours go from being that first day of the running club to walking through that job search training?
In Denver, we start that off immediately. So
Wow.
depending on where the member is, they're going to start coming to workshops, either bi-weekly or weekly, right away. And those are workshops that are led by our corporate partners, or really focused in those computer skills and those different pieces. But really what we say is, hey, if you can show up and walk, you can show up to a workshop and we can start pushing that forward. So it's a really physical way for us to look at other success metrics. Once you know, hey, I walked a mile today, tomorrow I'm going to walk a mile and a half. We can take that to their other aspects with next steps.
And then do you help with setting up the actual interviews then, maybe with some corporate sponsors or other partners around the community?
I'm very glad you mentioned that, Aaron. I almost forgot that part. So we have a really, really great relationship with different employers around the city. And so, like I mentioned, I can't give someone a job, but we can definitely work with our corporate partners to help hook up those interviews.
That's great. I love it. Because if I was in their situation, I would want all of those opportunities.
Right. And as you said, if I was in that situation, you probably have been in that situation one way or another. Someone has told you they believed in you. Someone has told you you can do it. And that's what we get to do on a daily basis.
You guys say yes to people who have heard no a lot in their lives.
Yeah.
Where can people find out more about Back on My Feet?
Backonmyfeet.org. And then if you want to get involved, backonmyfeet.org/get involved. So,
Awesome.
And hopefully we'll get some more folks out. Like I said, it's no matter how you like to volunteer, what skills you got, I can promise you we can make that connection.
Tell us about this morning.
Oh, this is actually one of my favorite ones. That's actually my mom in the photo.
Awesome. All right, Mom.
Bring your mom to work day.
Wow. Lindsey, thank you for sharing about the inspiring work you're doing with Back on My Feet. Friends, I would love to know, what's your biggest takeaway from today's discussion? Please enter that down below. I'd love to hear from you. For me, I think it's how Lindsey and Back on My Feet are helping people build connections with other people, build community, and rebuild the self-confidence so they can start to succeed in their own lives. And I think at the end of the day, those are the three things that we all need, whether it's somebody who is trying to start fresh or whether it's you and I, and we're just trying to navigate the day-to-day. For more stories of people doing extraordinary things in our community, check out this great video or this great video. Hey, either way, you're watching What's Good.